What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Total Takedown. This is for UFC 286. We got a big old juicy pay-per-view to talk about this week. If you haven't seen the show before, we go over overs and unders here on this episode. We've already broken down the entire card, top to bottom, every single fight. Check that out here on the live streams from Pub Sports Radio. You can see that in the video history. And we're going to go back over the card and talk totals. We're going to look at whether we think these fights are going to end inside the distance, if they're going to decision, and maybe take a different angle to try to make you some additional cash. The show is brought to you by Pub Sports Radio. The lines are powered by Superbook Sports. Hit the like button. Let's get rolling. First fight of the night, we've got Victoria. Geez, why do I keep saying Victoria? Veronica Hardy is taking on Juliana Miller. We got a 2.5 total here. The over 2.5 minus 105. The under 2.5 is minus 115. I like violence. You know, it's not often that we get a 2.5 spot here for women's MMA, especially at the lighter weight classes. But the way these two fight, if Veronica comes back looking anything like she did before she left the organization for her, sabbatical where she had to fix up all of her injuries and things like that, if she fights anything even close to how she used to, this fight is probably going under. She's extremely aggressive. She's got fast hands. She outworks her opponents. She is very much submission over position. She'll put herself in danger as well as snag opportunities from her opponents. She snaps off arms, she snaps off legs, she'll grab a neck. There's a lot of opportunities for her to both kill and be killed in this fight. We've seen what Juliana Miller can do. She's big, she's a size bully, she can get on top of you and pound you through the canvas. Yeah, I like under 2.5 for this first fight of the night. Klein next up, taking on Jai Herbert. A 2.5 here. We got over is plus 145. The under 2.5 minus 165. So we've got some juice here. And I think that makes sense. Klein, he's got that big, powerful left high kick. He's got the ability to wrestle. We've seen Jai Herbert. He's a long-rangey technical striker. When he gets his striking offense going, he is dangerous on the feet. However, Klein does seem to be made out of iron. He's a guy I'm not entirely sure that can be KO'd at this point in his career. I think Klein is going to knock out Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert's durability is a serious question. He's had problems with it in the past, and Klein is exactly the kind of guy that can take advantage of it again. I do worry just because of the way Jai fought his last fight. He could come out, cage push, try to slow down the clock, buy some time, avoid the power exchanges, but if he can't do that, Klein's going to have a field day. So I'll say under 2.5, minus 165. Pricey, a little bit pricey, but just in case Jai comes out and has a performance himself, that at least covers you. Luana Carolina taking on JoJo Calderwood. Total for this one is 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 320. The under 2.5 is plus 265. And generally speaking, we would say this is women's MMA, and you want to look over and you eat that chalk, and this thing's going 15 minutes, especially with the fact that both these women are rangy kickboxers. Not so fast. In this one, we've got JoJo Calderwood, who's been finished by submission in 3 out of her last 4 losses. We've got Luana Carolina, who was basically knocked out, flatlined the last time we saw her. And now she's coming back. Both these women have been finished. They've both shown finishing upside in the past before. Yes, they may be primary strikers, but they both know how to grapple, and they both seem to have weaknesses grappling. I've got a sneaky suspicion here that this one could go under, and one of these women might actually catch a submission. Not to mention the fact that JoJo Calderwood may have a foot in the grave. She's talking about only having a year or 2 left to compete in the sport. After taking off the time that she did, I think a full year after her last fight, she kind of lost herself. Now she's coming back. This could be it. If she takes another bad L, this could be the retirement fight. And if her head is in that space, the finish comes a little bit easier, in my opinion. We've seen that from retiring fighters before. I kind of like the degenerate under 2.5 at plus 265 for a little taste here in that spot. Next up, Malcolm Gordon taking on Jake Hadley. The total is 1.5. Over 1.5 is minus 140. Under 1.5 plus 120. I think Jake Hadley's going to run through Malcolm Gordon, to be honest. His boxing, his striking, he's so crisp. He's so clean. We know Gordon can't take a punch. And Hadley's submission game is on point. So if this thing does hit the ground, it's not like he's a fish out of water either. And Malcolm Gordon gets finished in every single one of his losses. Now, he also is a high-level grappler himself. So Gordon could potentially catch Jake Hadley in a finish as well. Personally, I don't see it, so I kind of think this is one-way traffic. But I do still think the under 1.5 is probably the move. Personally, I'd rather pay up a little bit, play Jake Hadley inside the distance, then you've got the whole fight to work with. Malcolm Gordon made it to the 3rd round in his last fight, so I think that's kind of something that we could see here where he survives, maybe gets it into the 2nd round, you're sweating the 1.5. Just take Hadley inside the distance, in my opinion, but I do actually think this is probably a round 1 fight, so under 1.5 at plus 120, it's not so bad. Dusko Todorovic taking on Christian Duncan. It looks like for whatever reason this line is not up at Superbook Sports, so I'm going to go ahead and find an alternate here to talk about. We've got a 1.5 total, minus 110 to either side, so this is a pick. I'm here at 1.5, and I get that. I personally would lean over 1.5. You know, this is Christian Duncan, who likes to take his time. He's rangy. He throws kicks out there. Big, explosive flying knees, you know, spinning heel kicks. If he lands one of those, this thing is over in a hurry. But he's got lots of late finishes on his record as well. And Dusko, he's got the UFC caliber experience. This guy goes out there and he goes to war. He went 15 minutes with Hobo Cop Rodriguez. Like, as much as I think he's chinny and he's a liability because he holds his chin up in the air and all that stuff, he has shown that he can compete at a decent level here at the UFC, and he's taking on an opponent who's not a guy that's going to come out and just crush his face in the first opportunity that he gets. He's a patient fighter. Because of that, I think Dusko's going to play the game a little bit. He's probably going to look for wrestling, for takedowns, for grappling. That could extend the fight a little bit as well, and we're going to wait for somebody to gas or find their groove before the finish occurs. I like over 1.5, especially at like a minus 110 price tag. Gabriel Santos taking on Lerone Murphy. Another 2.5 here. Over 2.5 is minus 150. The under 2.5 is plus 130. And I actually like that over 2.5 quite a bit. I know that sounds crazy because Lerone Murphy does have that soul-crushing power that he's taken people out with before. And you can't rule out a finish from him in this kind of a spot either. But Gabriel Santos is no joke. This kid is big for the weight class. He's tall, he's long, he knows how to grapple, mixes in the wrestling well, minds his range, and those are the kinds of things where I think he's going to limit the finishing opportunities from Lerone Murphy. And I also think he's going to mix in the grappling, and he's not going to do it like Makwan where he'll eat a flying knee coming in because he's too repetitive, I guess, with his takedowns. He's too predictable with his takedowns. The way he does it, it's probably going to keep him a decent bit safer, and I think he can extend this fight. I actually think we might see a good back and forth 15-minute war in this spot. Over 2.5, minus 150 is the play for me. We've got Rafael Filo taking on Muhammad Mokayev, a 2.5 total for this one. The over 2.5 plus 115. The under 2.5 is minus 135. And I'd be looking violence here as well. Now, this is another spot, though. You guys know my rules. When it comes to totals, I want both fighters to contribute to my under somehow if I'm going to play it. The only way Filo really contributes to this under is he leaves his neck out. We've seen Muhammad Mokayev snap people off with submissions time and time again. He's so good on the ground. And this guy is going to present opportunities for that submission to be something that takes place. Beyond that, though, I can't knock Filo very much. Like, the kid's skilled, he's solid, he's well-muscled, he's strong. Like, he knows, like, he looks what he's doing. He's definitely someone who maybe could have a future here in the UFC. I just think the grappling of Muhammad Mokayev is going to be too much for him, and I think he leaves too many opportunities where some of his low-level opponents have not been able to catch him or make him pay for those mistakes. I think Muhammad Mokayev will. So I'll say under 2.5 at minus 135, but again, I'd rather play Muhammad Mokayev by sub. You can get plus money on that one, and I think that's the way it goes. I don't see him knocking this guy out. So, maybe a better way to play that fight. Yanel Ashmous taking on Sam Patterson. Total set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is plus 125. The under 2.5 is minus 145. And this one's tough because I do get the argument for the under. Sam Patterson has a wicked choke series. He's got that high elbow guillotine. He's got the ninja choke. He's so dirty when people come in on him with his submission attempts. Yanel Ashmous, we don't know a whole lot about him, but what he does is he drags people late. He tires them out. He pounds them through the canvas. He is a wrecking ball moving forward. But we've seen Sam Patterson have that kind of game plan worked on him before, and it really took a Hail Mary submission for him to come back from that. He managed to get the finish, he managed to get the win, but it looked like he was cruising towards a decision loss. I actually think this is an over spot. I think Yanel is tough and durable enough to hang on the feet, and I think the way he mixes in the grappling is going to keep this fight extended, and whether or not he gets his neck caught at the last second is really going to be the question. If Patterson is able to get his big, lanky, long arms around this kid's neck, then it's probably over. But if he can't, I think Yanel probably outworks him for a 15-minute decision. I'll say over 2.5 at plus 125. Next up, we got Omar Morales taking on Christopher Duncan, the other Duncan coming in here on this spot. Total set at 1.5, over 1.5 minus 145, under 1.5 plus 125. And it's a Chris Duncan fight. I want to say that you kind of are picking your fighter here with this one, right? Like, if Omar Morales is shot, Duncan's going to walk him down and punch a hole through his face. Because that's what this guy does. That's what he does to everybody he fights every time. And this is going to be a one-round fight if that happens. However, If Omar Morales is in this fight, if he looks better moving back up to 155, if he's found his footing after his last knockout loss, if he's taken this fight seriously, it probably looks a lot like Cody Garbrandt's fight, where he does everything he can to get the win. He stays as safe as humanly possible. And that's the kind of spot where this thing goes over 1.5. He'll focus on being the more rangy technical striker. He'll set traps. He'll mind his P's and Q's. He's always a little bit more low volume than his opponents. So I would say Omar Morales kind of leans itself to the over 1.5. But the way Christian Duncan fights, it forces a firefight every single time. Like, no matter who he's facing, you're going to have to throw to keep up with this guy. You're going to have to punch to get him off of you. So there's a chance this thing goes under 1.5, even if Omar Morales is in the driving seat. So I guess I'll say under. I'll say under 1.5 against my better judgment. You know what? No, over. I'm going to say over. Over 1.5. Your butthole puckers just a little bit, but Omar Morales drags this thing into the second round. That's what I'll say. Makwan Americanni taking on Jack Shore. Total set at 1.5 again. We got the over 1.5 minus 165, the under 1.5 plus 145. And I think the over 1.5 here makes sense. Makwan Americanni is a round one or bust fighter, essentially. However, he will have a size advantage here in this spot against Jack Shore. Both these guys are primary grapplers. Jack Shore is not like an elite sniper on the feet, so even though he does have a striking advantage, he's not the kind of guy that's going to destroy you with a single shot on the feet. I think that Makwan Americanni will have success grappling early. Jack Shore will need to defend the early pressure and then drag this fight late. He'll take over as Makwan Americanni slows down. Whether it's a late second round finish or a third round finish, I do think Jack Shore probably drags the fight deep. So I'll say over 1.5, minus 165 is the move. Roman Deleside taking on Marvin Vettori, maybe my favorite fight on this card. Total set at 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 190. Under 2.5 plus 170. And again, it's kind of binary. If you're saying over Marvin Vettori, he's a decision machine. This guy goes to the cards every single time. You can't finish him. He can eat a freaking shot from a sledgehammer. Does not matter. He keeps coming forward. Roman Deleside, on the other hand, is a finishing machine. He doesn't win decisions. He tires out. He makes bad decisions. He rolls for ankle locks. He ends up on bottom of his opponents. But when he wins, he's shredding the muscles and the tendons in your knee. And he's knocking you unconscious with big power shots and head kicks. Like, if this thing's going under, it's Roman Deleside getting the win. If this thing's going over, it's Marvin Vettori in the driver's seat. Now, there is some chance that maybe Marvin Vettori, being the young, improving fighter that he is, has made some upgrades to his game. And if Roman slows down and gets tired, he puts him away with like a volume TKO victory or something like that in the third round. So there's a chance that Marvin could potentially finish. I got a hard time seeing his first finish coming on this fight against this guy personally. So I think Marvin, by decision, drags this thing over 2.5 at minus 190, and Deleside does everything he can, like usual, to hold on, threatens just enough so that he's not completely on the defensive and doesn't get stopped, but we get to the judges' scorecards. I'll say over, not betting it. Don't step in front of Deleside, especially when it comes to the total. Casey O'Neill taking on Jennifer Maia. 2.5 total here. Over 2.5 minus 280. Under 2.5 is plus 240. And yeah, I think we're going over on women's MMA here for this one. Jennifer Maia has been crazy durable throughout her career. Even if she does get taken down, she's a sneaky BJJ black belt off of her back. She can snatch arms up and stuff like that. But whenever her opponents are in the driver's seat when it comes to the grappling, she plays defensive and kind of has to stay that way. Casey O'Neill, good, strong offensive grappling game. We could see her hit takedowns and get Maia to the ground. But if she can't do that, she's really going to need to stick and move. She's going to need to use that reach, that athleticism, that speed. She's going to need to play on the outside. She can't get into a barn burner kickboxing match the way she did with Roxanne Modafferi, because Maia's got some pop in her hands. She could catch her with something big if she does that. So I think either way, unless it's a Jennifer Maia armbar, this thing's probably going a full 15. So I'll say over 2.5. Brian Barberena taking on Gunny Nelson here. Total again at 2.5. The under 2.5 is minus 135. The over 2.5 is plus 115. This makes sense to me. I like under 2.5 minus 135 here. Gunnar Nelson, extremely low volume, but big power if he catches you with something crazy like a head kick. Brian Barberena, high volume, constantly in your face, zero takedown defense. If Gunnar Nelson takes this thing to the floor, he probably styles on Brian Barberena. However, if Brian can stay safe, if he can work his get-up game, if he can wear out Gunnar Nelson with the volume, then we've got a shot at Brian Barberena getting a traditional late TKO. So I think either way, one of these guys finds their way to a finish. I'll say under 2.5. Rafael Fiziev taking on Justin Gaethje is your co-main event for UFC 286. Total set at 1.5. The over 1.5 is minus 175. The under 1.5 plus 155. And if you're going over 1.5, you are going to be sweating buckets. But I kind of think that's what happens here. I mean, we've seen Justin Gaethje have this insane whirlwind kickboxing style where he's breaking people's legs and faces, but it still gets him into the 4th and 5th round of championship title fights. Like, I can see this fight going late, and even if Fiziev is the more class striker, even if he is able to outwork Justin Gaethje on the feet, if he is more slick, if he is more technical, Justin Gaethje eats bombs. Like, he's taken so much damage over the course of his career, but we've also seen him take that damage and keep on coming and say, thank you, sir, I'll have some more. It took Dustin Poirier into the 3rd round, 4th round to get him out of there. It could be the same story here with Fiziev. Now, I think Fiziev is a different level striker, but I also think Justin Gaethje is preparing for that. Anytime Justin Gaethje comes in for war and puts that King of Violence, title on the line, you see him get extended in the fight. This thing could be one-punched by either of these guys. I just think they're both tough enough to take it. So I'll say over 1.5, minus 175. Main event time, Kamaru Usman taking on Leon Edwards, the rematch, the trilogy, for it all. Total set at 4.5. The over is minus 140. The under is plus 160, set at 4.5 rounds. This one's tough because we've got so much backclass here on this fight, right? We've seen this fight take place twice already. The first one went a full 15 minutes. The second one looked like it was going to go a full 25 minutes. At altitude, it looks like it's a dead nuts over. It really does. But for some reason, I feel like we're going to see violence here. Kamaru Usman just got finished. He just got shown that he's human. You got to wonder what that does to his mentality. You got to wonder if he plays it safe. Maybe he comes out extra aggressive. Same thing on the other side. Leon Edwards, he was playing defensive the entire fight, switched it on, came out, and killed the guy in the 5th round. You got to wonder if that gives him the confidence to maybe start a little faster, come out a little earlier the next time, start looking for the kill shot, not in the 5th round, but maybe in the 2nd or the 3rd. I think there's a chance we see this fight repeat. Personally, I'm on the Leon Edwards side. I locked in the bet already, and I think he can probably get the finish and maybe even do it quicker. And if Kamaru Usman does have a path in this fight, obviously it's the takedowns, obviously it's the grappling, it's taking this thing to a decision. But he also might come out with that chip on his shoulder and look to prove this thing, put it away early, land some bigger strikes this time around. I'm going to say under. I think this fight's going to be different from the other two. I think these two might go at it a little bit earlier. I'll say under 4.5 at plus 160. No confidence in that whatsoever. I cannot wait for this main event. That is the Total Takedown, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button on your way out. Good luck on all your degenerate action. And make sure you tune in right here at Pub Sports Radio tomorrow, where we will have the Sharp Action Report, as well as the undefeated post-weigh-in show. See you there. Good luck. Let's roll.